Hi guys, welcome aboard Southern Cross for some more DIY fun. Now that Mads and Ava have probably got the entire Sail Life litigation team fired up to sue me for copyright infringement, I just want to welcome you aboard Southern Cross. On this channel I'm going to take some time to continue to do the work I've been doing the last couple of years, and except now I'm going to film it and show it to you guys. The hope is that maybe you'll learn something. I know I'm going to learn something. I basically I'm doing this and learning it as I go, so I will make mistakes as I go, and hopefully that prevents you from making the same mistakes. So welcome aboard, and let's get started.
Look, if you're serious about boat work videos, there's a few channels I'd recommend to you. Sail Life would be the first one I'd send you to. They just did an amazing job on their boat. Boatworks Today is one that I've watched and rewatched so many of his videos. And finally, Parlay Revival is one where they've just done an amazing job on a Lagoon 450, so check those out.
Okay, so first things first, I should catch you up on what I've done before I started pressing record on the camera. That included taking off the winches. I took off the winch that I use for my my roller furling, and it's kind of a secondary winch in case the main winches fail on me. That's these guys here. Now, I couldn't get these off. I took the backing plates off and took all the bolts out. But these guys must have been sealed down with some 5200 or something incredibly strong, because no matter what I tried, I just could not get them off. So you'll see my very fancy cover that I've made for them here out of a Ziploc bag, so that I could do the sanding that I've done so far without getting too much grime and grit in the gearing. I'll of course clean those all up before I put it all back together. Lastly, what I did is there was some blocks back here that I took off, and I've made some new blocks, which I'll show you in a second, with the help of a good friend of mine who is just a whiz at making this kind of stuff, and I'll put a link to his business down below if you're in the Durham region and are interested in that kind of stuff. So new bases for those blocks. I bought new old stock blocks, so they sort of match what was there before. And I sanded this all down, and I filled in these holes with some thickened epoxy, and they look like they've settled in. Probably the Gorilla Tape that I used underneath to capture the thickened epoxy didn't quite hold, because I can see that it's gone down quite a bit. What I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to be color matching the coaming top here to the gel coat work I did last winter, and then I'll be applying a non-skid to match the non-skid work that I did here. So that's and it's the same on both sides. All that hardware has been removed, and I've gone over it with my handy dandy sander hooked up to my very loud vacuum cleaner using a 40 grit paper, really aggressive paper, because I needed to get through all that thickened gel coat that was on there. So the other thing that I've done is I have removed the winches from the coach roof. Both winches, those aren't original locations for those winches. So what I was finding is there just wasn't a lot of strength there for the loads that were being presented on those winches. This is the main halyard winch on this side, as well as the spinnaker halyard. On this side is my my Genoa halyard, and my bang, and my spinnaker pole topping lift. So it's a much smaller winch on this side, a lot less load. But I decided to do the same thing on both sides, with one exception I'll show you in a second, which was underneath I've applied 3 layers of woven mat on this side with epoxy, West System epoxy, as well as 1 layer of 1.5 ounce chop mat. On this side, just the 3 layers of the West System woven mat. the idea is just to give that area just a little bit more strength. I noticed, particularly on the main halyard this summer, there was a little bit of movement, and as I'll show you in a second, there's some hairline cracks that have occurred in the gel coat, which just tell me that there's not quite enough strength there. So I've just tried to beef up the underside. The other advantage of applying the mat from the underside is that I didn't have to deal with this radius. If I built up fiberglass, if I ground down this gel coat and then built up the fiberglass on this side, I'd really have a hard time getting that nice clean radius again. This way I can just sand that area and apply fresh gel coat, and it'll have the original shape, which is a lot easier, and hopefully the result should look good.
Here we are on the underside of the coach roof with the fresh epoxy and mats that I had applied. I applied the woven mats underneath that chop mat in a star pattern just to try and give it a bit of strength. Like I'd mentioned before, on the other side here I didn't use the chop mat, I just used the woven mats and applied those in a bit of a crisscross star pattern. Hopefully that'll be good and strong. Back on the top here, you'll see the fills for the holes that I did with a thickened epoxy. It looks a mess, but I'm not worried about that because I will be sanding it and then going over it eventually with fresh gel coat. Same thing here on the combing top. This will have a non-skid applied to it. That'll be color matched. Now these holes here were from cleats that used to be on the combing before I bought the boat. There weren't self-tailing winches, and so you needed cleats to be able to tie off your sheets. Here's the mess that I made on the cheek block holes, but again, I'm not concerned about that mess so much because, of course, I will be getting out my handy-dandy sander and making it smooth. Here it is. And just like that, it's perfectly smooth, with the exception of the holes where the epoxy had settled. But other than that, it's perfectly smooth to the touch. And I wanted to get the same effect here on the fills that I did on these holes, so I went at it with my my sander, and it came out quite nice. For anyone out there who may be feeling a little bit nervous about tackling any repairs in their gel coat, going at it with a sander, I'd say don't be. It's a very forgiving material, and it's one that if you have the patience and the time, you can really make it come out looking just excellent by going at it with progressively finer and finer sandpaper, and right up to wet sanding and then buffing. It really comes out looking great. I didn't need to sand the underside. No one will ever see it, but I do have to work on it from time to time, and there was a few rough edges, so I just didn't want to have to cut my fingers while I'm doing that.
So I don't know whether this can pick it up or not, but you can see all these hairline fractures here. The hope is that the matting underneath will give it the strength it needs to, that when I put fresh gel coat over top of it, those cracks won't bleed through. I could be wrong about that, but that's why I'm making the mistakes and not you.
Now, you may be wondering why I'm bothering to drill these holes now when I'm just going to be covering this whole surface with fresh gel coat in any event. I'm doing it now because, well, for two reasons. One, I'm not going to be changing the location or the type of winch in this particular spot, and so it's just easier to do this now while I can see the holes clearly, because they're not covered with opaque gel coat.
Now, you can see that there's been two different styles of winches, or maybe just two different locations, but I think it's two different winches just because they don't quite line up. And I may replace this again, which is why I haven't bothered to drill out the holes today. I may upgrade that winch. The winch that's there, it looks a little old and tired. I'll show it to you here in a second. So here's what that winch looks like. You can see that all the plating has started to flake off. It's rough to my fingers, and I could probably flake that off. And it's not a very big or powerful winch, especially when you can compare that to my main halyard winch, which is of course a self-tailing model. It's an old variant, but it's in great shape. The puny little winch on the other side probably needs to be replaced. So these are the blocks that I was mentioning that my friend helped me make. This old block is actually old stock from Port Whitby Marine Supply Store. Shout out to Ron for helping me out. He gave me a good deal on these because they're 30 years old and have been sitting around the shop for probably about that long. So I filled in the holes on this side, but not on the other side, because although this one here is a direct replacement for what was there before, with a fresh piece of plastic block to angle it just so, but that will go straight through, and I'm going to use that on the other side. But this guy here, oops. This is a different model. This is a Schaefer block. This guy's an old Fico, now owned by Ron Stan. That's so Fico style block, cheek block, and this is a Schaefer style cheek block. And although they're very close, as you can see them side by side here, the bolt hole patterns are just a little bit different. So I tried to fill these. I'm gonna have to fill those up again when we get a bit of a warmer day. It's a bit cold for epoxy work today. I'm gonna re-drill fresh holes for the Schaefer block, and although they look a little bit different, that was why he gave me a good deal. Thanks again, Ron, you're the best.
So let's get into some upcoming projects here. I'll show you a few teasers of things I'm going to record throughout the year and hopefully show to you guys. One is I need to do some work on this motor. It's dirty, the exhaust is dirty, the hoses are old. This motor is a single cylinder SB12 made by Yanmar. It's essentially a piece of farm equipment Yanmar made in the 1970s, and there is just nothing online about it, so I'm a little nervous to work on it, because if anything breaks I won't have any replacement parts. But so be it. This is a problem all boats have. The head stinks. The hoses again are old, and I'm sure the smell is just permeating through that plastic. So I'm going to start by replacing those hoses. I may replace the through hulls as well. This whole sink cabinet is going to make this a real pain in the behind, but I may get rid of that cabinet altogether. I don't use the sink. I've never used it. So there's that. Lastly, I'm going to remove the prop and make it spiffy again. Yeah, I got to shine that up. So I'll do a neat little video, show you how to remove the prop and how to take care of it. I'll also replace the anode here. This is a magnesium one, not a zinc. I'm in Lake Ontario, Great Lake. We use magnesium. So yeah, that's the video. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you'll like and subscribe and all that, so that you can catch those new videos when they eventually do come out. Thanks again.